Well, well, well. So, stack sensor. Hmm. Is that what we're going to get with the ZF? That's possible. Information is coming out saying that the new ZF could possibly have a stack sensor. But of course, we don't know exactly which sensor this thing is going to have. I want to speculate a little bit more. I want to take it back a couple months ago prior to the Z8 launch. I was scouring the patent pages of Nikon to find out what they could possibly be coming out with for their next camera. We know there's a Z8, Z6 III, maybe Z7. Nothing was solid at the time. And I mentioned to you guys about some of the things that I saw listed there. And of course, one of those things was a sensor, backside illuminated sensor, stat sensor. Nikon lists a couple of other sensors. And as some community members said to me, a lot of time when people put out patent information, even though they've been granted for certain things, they may not come to fruition for a couple more years. Nikon has been building sensors for a few years now. And while people don't think that Nikon does any sensor design, everybody on the Sony side, also everybody, a lot of Sony fanboys, like to think that Nikon can't do anything on their own. Even though people explain it multiple times, the fact that Nikon does build some of the lithographic machines and sells them. And at some point, they did their own sensors. Now, we won't dive back into that. Recently, Matt Irwin did a video on that to explain how these things work. So if you're interested about this stuff, you can go watch that one. Needless to say, Nikon designs sensors, Sony makes them and provides them to Nikon. Just the same way as they do with other manufacturers. And there's some things that they sell off the shelf, as people would say, to different manufacturers. With that being said, we know that currently there is one stack sensor in Nikon's lineup. That sensor is being used between the Z8 and the Z9. Now, I put forth some information saying that I think the ZF should have a 45 megapixel stack sensor. And I gave my reasons why. I'm not going to list all those things here right now. But the main crux of it is this. When you think about what Sony's been doing with their A7S3 sensor and marketing that in multiple cameras and basically retooling it with different processors, with different software systems to make it perform better in each arena, why could Nikon do the same with this one great sensor that they have? And as we know, I think we should notice at this point, usually the imaging system is pretty much built onto the sensor, right? It's a combination of what the sensor can do and what the lens can do. And with that all together with processing, you get your final image that you take at the end of the day. We agree that Nikon could probably tweak your sensor a bit. We've heard some people say sometimes they take photos and it catches the eyelashes, not the eyeball. So maybe there's some tweaks there, but again, a lot of people take photographs, very happy with it, consider very sharp. But if that's the case, and we're looking at a 2,000 to 2,500, a lot of us have been kind of stuck on the 2,000 price point because it sounds kind of good, right? Now, if Nikon did this, again, they would have to strip out a lot of things from what the Z8 and Z9 has to bring this camera down to that price point. We never thought about having any stack sensor in this low price point. But stack sensors is not a new thing. They've been around for a while. So maybe Nikon has bought a whole bunch of them and decided they're going to put them in the camera and they're going to utilize them. And we're going to get something that's really great, really fantastic, really fast. And utilizing the XP7 processor. In my mind, Olympics is coming up next year. People talk about Canon and what Sony's going to be bringing out next year as far as new camera to showcase at the Olympics. Maybe Nikon is working on something else. And at this point, they can basically make use of all this 45 megapixel sensor that they have, put them in whatever they want to put them into. But at the same time, going back to those other sensors that have been developing, if indeed what we're hearing is that the ZF will have a stack sensor, it could possibly be a whole new stack sensor, something we haven't seen before. Not 45 megapixel, maybe something in the 30 something megapixel range. Maybe they'll go 26 or somewhere around there, right? Because if this camera is not really going to be for photography, sorry, for video use, it'll have some video use, but I think as a retro style camera, most of us are thinking that it's going to be a photography mainly design. I don't think it's going to be only that based upon the ZFC. I don't think Nikon's going to go back all the way to the DF and just make a photo only camera today in 2023. Doesn't make sense in my mind. So let's say they want to give it some really good specs. And in my mind, basic 8K would be the top spec. Again, you don't need a 45 megapixels for that. You probably need like a 26 megapixel sensor, I believe is what you need for 8K. And you really don't need even 33 megapixels. But I think that's something that they could do if they really wanted to. For great photo and black and white, and I do have a video talking about the black and white thing. There's a switch on the camera supposedly for black and white, and we know that some other manufacturers have just come out with black and white only cameras. So Nikon may do something along those lines, and I'm saying along those lines as in a better sensor, better dynamic range, really increased performance, but probably won't reach up the same level as like Leica or those guys, because that's a ridiculous price point for that one. And that camera's like a 61 megapixel sensor. So do you need to have that much megapixels to have great dynamic range? No, you don't. You can do it with much less. So for photo camera and for video use, having great dynamic range is something that people always talk about having. So this could be the first of a new sensor coming from Nikon. And I started to think, when Sony came out with the FX30, great sensor, there was nothing else in their lineup that carried that sensor. And very recently, the 6700 came out, which basically utilized that same sensor with all the features added back in on the photo side that the FX30 didn't have. The FX30 is only single shot, no drive modes. So we could be looking at something new, wholly new. Or we could be looking at the Z8, Z9 sensor in this thing. Now, what I'd like to hear from you guys is, what do you think they're going to do? If it is in fact a stack sensor, what's your guess? Brand new sensor or same old, same old? Put in the comments. Love to hear from you guys. Wanted to start this discussion on this one because now that it seems to be firming up that it's a stack sensor, I think we could be looking at something different. Anyhow, gonna run. See you guys next time.